I went there first in 1985 and sold engineering software. And the top of the technical management of the country wanted that software, including the leader of the space program, including the party chairman of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, really the top people in the country. And I bonded with one of them, and she any door she knocked on opened. And she had she said, well, okay, you're an engineer, and you really you really are adamant about quality. I'll put you with our aerospace company. Not put you with, I'll open those aerospace doors. And so we went there. When we went there, we met people who violated the Chinese rule and bonded with us. One was my wife. And directed us to other options in Beijing. So it's a little idiosyncratic. Sorry, I don't have a general rule. I recommend the Canadian Embassy because they are, I think, the most effective Western operation in Beijing. We have a US-American Chamber of Commerce, which is mostly for bigger companies. Motorola's owner runs that, Chris Galvin. There's an awfully good network of, if you have somebody in Beijing who is in business or in your area, it's a very accessible country for the Chinese themselves. And so they can set you up as an entrepreneur. So I didn't use any of the formal channels. In fact, they seem to have antibodies against entrepreneurs. If you go to a ministry or you go to a trade organization or you go to something else in China, as an entrepreneur the first question is, how many employees do you have? The answer is more than 1,000. Because if it's under 100, it's, well, we're busy. That's been my experience. Somebody else may have another. Wait, maybe you guys want to chime in?
No, I just want to make sure that one of the big things for China is this relationship, which they call Quanxi. And Quanxi is the measure relationship. And you can get it in many ways. You can get it in many ways. You know, anybody who is like an Olympic champion, you know, the UN every September have these leaders, and you go down there and you pay a little bit of money and go to a cocktail. I developed a heck of a lot of Quanxi, which I used in taking a lot of business people to China, because I went to China to run a workshop on electronics authentication. But I knew the president of the Bank of China, who's like number 2, number 3 in the country. And he gave me his card, which is specially marked. He signed something at the back of it. And I had this card, a big story, but this card was worth everything that I needed. And people, Citicorp, most companies would come and ask me to take them to China, because with that card, there is no appointment I could not get. Unfortunately, he died, and I went to his funeral. And the reason I went to his funeral was not to mourn his death, but to find out, who was going to take over from him. But you know, I mean, you know, but the key word here is Quanxi, and there are many ways of getting it, you know, and you have to, you know, there are a lot of different ways of getting that.
How does the tax situation work? It's a fairly flat tax, 25% of profits. The question should be, where's the profits? Because you can move profits around with transfer pricing. And there are two economic Chinas. There's Hong Kong and mainland China. So you do shift your business. It's best, in my opinion, it's best to do your business through Hong Kong. There's several advantages to that. One is going from mainland to Hong Kong is fairly easy. And the second is the mainland doesn't know your business model and your connections, your profit margins, and a whole bunch of other things. The Hong Kong side doesn't know your sources, suppliers, and what your business is about. So, and then it's pretty much the same as in the US. I mean, it's, accounting is becoming increasingly standardized. And there's a curious thing in China. I always say it can cost, from an accounting point of view, whatever you want it to cost. Meaning you can negotiate the paperwork before you get the product. And that can alleviate a lot of things because state-owned companies have a different tax and a relationship structure than privately owned companies in China. And so I worked on both sides. Was that confusing enough? Because that, if it's confusing, then I portrayed the life on the land.
Yeah, it is a complicated scenario in that we have two entities, one in the U.S. and one in India. But as I mentioned, our clients are in the U.S., so we earn the revenue here. We book it over there and convert it to rupees. And the Indian firms are all making a fair amount of money. You know, the dollar has appreciated about 10% this year against the rupee. So the Indian firms are making quite a bit of money of transferring U.S. dollars to rupees. And that's where a significant piece of their profits are coming from this year. That's one of the reasons why the Indian firms can report a greater profit.
So we had one incident where we were setting up this was in the late 90s, setting up a subsidiary in Taiwan. And in Taiwan, I think at the time, I don't know what it is today, is that bribes are part of the culture. And then we had a salesman that was basically taking bribes to set up the subsidiary, and they wanted to terminate him because it wasn't consistent with what we wanted to do. And it got to be a big mess. We sent the CFO over there, and because the salesman knew the local language, CFO spent the night in jail. Because at first they showed up there and they said, this guy is stealing from us and this, that, or whatever. And the local salesman talked to the police and said, these guys are stealing from me. And all of a sudden, until the law got sorted out, the CFO was in jail. So there was a bit of a conflict.
I think this gentleman made a good point in that you think of India as a country, but there are a lot of states in India, and they vary substantially. And I find the legal system in India pretty complex and hard to maneuver and very different than our legal system, certainly. And I would suggest that we run a tag team in our organization, and I have a partner who's an Indian. And as I mentioned, you have to understand the internals, the culture and the internals of these countries. And I would say a person here is not the right answer to send people over there or try to figure it out from over here. You need to partner with people there who are born and have grown up there and who know that area just as well as to hire there. We don't try to hire people here and send them there. We hire there because these people know India much better than we do. So I think it's important. I think that's a critical success factor, that you have a team and you work with people who speak the language and who know the secret handshake and who know those countries. There's places in India I wouldn't go for that reason, and then there are places that you would go. In the South is where really the high tech and the services and the software is. The BPO is more up north. The financial capital markets is more around Mumbai, but it depends on what you're doing and where you go in India. And there's some places I just wouldn't go because they are more difficult. There's more instability, etc. So you can't. I wouldn't do it just a broad brush across India. It's a big country, and it varies considerably, and it's not. It doesn't have the standardization that you expect and know in the United States, for example.